Well, it's very interesting that most of the time the people with the most qualifications are not the person chosen. Interestingly, there are some people with tremendous amounts of experiences and background and education that don't even get called in for interviews. And mostly that's because so many people do their resume or do their job search through the lens of themselves, right? Now, if I'm the employer who's taking sort of a customer-focused view, I'm looking about what I need and what I am looking for. When I look at your resume, I'm not looking at it to learn what a great person you are. I'm looking at it to determine, is this something that will be useful in my organization specifically? So the folks who tend to get the first pass interviews, who make it through the initial screens, tend to do the diligent research, tend to write from the top of the resume to the bottom of the resume and throughout the cover letter specifics that apply to the situation that they're engaging. From the objective, too many people write objectives about what they want. And the objective is not about what they want. The objective is about what is required by the circumstance. Looking at how the keywords in the objective match what the customer sees as keywords and connecting it to the objective is critical. So that's what I mean, is putting everything through the view of someone else. The people who do that best tend to be the ones who get the interviews, and long-term tend to be the ones who get the job offers.
And you had mentioned the 7-second rule, and oftentimes it's not the person who's the most qualified who gains the position.
That is correct. The application process is a process. It's an ugly process on both sides. The applicants hate it because it's long, lengthy. Sometimes these applicant tracking systems can take up to 20 minutes, half an hour to fill out one application. Mm-hmm. Some of them are simpler, where it's just send me a resume and a cover letter. But no matter what way the resume is delivered, the initial screen is almost lightning fast. The screener, which could be a hiring manager, it could be an HR person, it could be a recruiter, third party, is looking to get the volume that they get smacked with early on and get that. So the first task is not to pick the best person. The first task is to get the volume to a manageable size, and that is done through a quick pass. So on average, it takes about 7 seconds to understand whether this is a resume that I want to continue reading or not. Mm-hmm. And what am I looking for is clarity. Do I understand what this person is, who this person is, categorically? From a product management perspective, it would be, do I understand what product I am purchasing? So first and foremost, what is the product? What does this person do? Does it match what I need for this specific circumstance of this job opening? And is there some quick evidence that says this might be somebody I want to speak to, and that's where your keywords and the language plays a large role.
Okay, great. You also, in last night's class, you had us do an exercise in class, and you had gone around the room and said, "Who are you? What's your name?" What does that mean?
What does the word mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, your name, as you grow throughout organizations, you will never actually know what people really think about you. When you get into organizations, there's a talent management process. You have senior management people who sit around a room and they discuss things like who you are, what's your value, what your potential is. You may never know precisely that. However, you do have a role in managing that. Mm-hmm. The things that you get involved in, the level of your ability to attach your tasks to things that are important within your organization for your current organization or future organizations. That's how you get identified. So you can get, as you grow throughout your career, you might be known as somebody who's great at doing startups, or somebody who's great at managing an operation, or somebody who's highly technical in a specific accounting process, or extremely creative, in the advertising world. Those are the things that you want to come to people's minds when your name floats in front of them. So it's your brand. if you will. And that's what I meant by that. So if right now, if your name appears and I don't have an image, well, now that's a good and a bad thing. I don't have an image because I don't know you, which means that it's an open book. You could now give me information about who you are and manage my perception of who you are.
And you also mentioned about selling. Keep selling. Always be selling.
Always be understanding the needs of others. That's what I mean by that. The more you take the conversation off of you and onto the others, whether it be as an aggressive sale or whether it be in service to others, however you want to frame it, the more you know about others, what they're working on, what their key challenges are, the more you can now present how you can be helpful to them in their context, right? That's what good sales is. A good salesperson is not really there to sell. It's really there to create solutions around other people's needs. And the staffing process is no different than that.
Okay, and I think this is a nice segue to managing the interview. What should we consider when going in for that interview?
There's two things going on in an interview. The first is this perception that you're walking in as an applicant to be judged by another person. That applicant mentality really sets you up and puts you in a defensive mode in that this person is judging me. Your job is to eliminate that dynamic. What you instead want to do is talk about how you and I together are going to solve specific problems. So move away from judgment of yourself as an applicant, because that's not why you're there. You're there to take control and to show why you're the right person for this circumstance. And you do that by asking proactive questions, intelligent questions, of which the answers will be things like, I have these problems, I have these needs. So you can now attach your value to those needs that are being discussed by the interviewer.
Okay. So, Bob, here's some resumes and cover letters of some of the students who are taking the Writing for the Organization and Client class online. What are your thoughts?
Well, initially, let's look at this one right here, which has a very nice format. Here's a person who leads with a communications master's degree. I'm a public relations and journalism undergraduate. I'm a graduate assistant. I'm an editorial intern. I'm a public relations intern. So when I look through all of that, this is a generic resume that if I were to look at this in a 7-second scan, I would really say I need some help understanding why I would put this into the yes pile versus the no pile. Because let's say the person who's a communications person, strategic communication is a generic term. Just like most majors in school, finance is a generic term, which could mean multiple things. Marketing is a generic term, which means multiple things. Communications is a very general term. So who am I as a customer? Am I in advertising? Am I an internal communications person? Am I a media person? So whoever I am needs to be reflected somehow in the beginning of this resume. So this person here doesn't put an objective, for example. So not putting an objective means that now I'm in the position where I have to figure out the one or two words that summarizes the entire page, right? And I'm not sure I know how to do that, right? Maybe if I was an editorial person specifically, maybe I could say, okay, I know what that is because that's me. But what if I'm not an editorial person? Now I don't know how to connect this to me. So there's nothing that binds it with a tagline. If your background is extremely clear, then maybe you don't need that. I think this one does need that. Also, the other thing that I find interesting about this resume is it's very tasky. So I see organize and attend alumni events, create Pirate Press alumni newsletter, read, evaluate, and edit transcripts. This tells me nothing about the person. This tells me about the job that they sat in. And other people who have sat in this job have done similar things. So there's no way that this person is differentiating themselves from others. I would eliminate all these bullets, and I would take a step back and say, why do I do these things? What is it that the Seton Hall Alumni Relations Department does? What are their key priorities? Are there key priorities around attendance of events? Is it around increasing how many people go on their LinkedIn page? Is it about getting more donations. What are the outputs of their efforts? And these tasks need to be connected to those outputs. What kind of problems do you solve? I mean, this is a master's degree student.
Mm-hmm.
Master's degree students are not going to get hired to do tasks. They're going to get hired to solve problems. My problems, not problems that they solve for somebody else, but the problems that I have. And if I'm in a public relations capacity, I may be looking for similar goals to the people who work at the Seton Hall Alumni Relations Department. Editorial intern at Simon & Schuster, read, evaluate, and edit manuscripts. What's the output? Communicate with authors and agents. So what's the goal associated? Is your goal to get more authors and agents?
Mm-hmm.
Is it to establish strong-term strategic partnerships with authors and agents? What is it that happened as a result of these efforts? So that's just looking at this particular resume. It's formatted very beautifully, but format doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Your resume could look perfect, but it doesn't. I am not looking for perfect resumes. I'm looking for interesting resumes, the ones that sort of match my need. You have one over here. The person writes a summary, which is the same thing as an objective, detail-oriented and proactive, excellent communication skills, effectively build relationships and with coworkers and clients. These are generic platitudes that you could say anybody. If I had a lineup of 2,000 people at this door right now and said, "Raise your hand if you're not detail-oriented," nobody would raise their hand, right? So this person is basically saying what everybody says about themselves. The summary, the objective at the top of the page should not be a description of you. It should be a description of the attributes you have that match the specific situation that the client is looking for, quite frankly.
That seems to be the running theme.
It's not about you.
Right.
If you think it's about you, you're going to lose.
Right.
There's no doubt about that.
Right.
So does that help?
It's very helpful, very helpful. So any other thoughts about what a resume should look like, a cover letter? What are some do's and don'ts with respect to resume and cover letter writing? How long should it be? You had mentioned keywords. I remember yesterday you had a circling keywords. In the scan, yeah. Within that 7-second scan. Right?
If I'm a hiring manager or I'm a human being, I'm a relatively selfish animal. I'm looking for things that are going to benefit me in my life, right? So I'm looking for things that appeal to me, that define me, not define you, define me.
Mm-hmm.
So the more I see me on the page, the more likely it is that I'm able to, I may be interested in speaking with you. Ideally, graduate student, the stereotype, 3 to 5 year graduate student in terms of 3 to 5 years of experience. 1-page resume is fine.
Mm-hmm.
A cover letter this is a perfect length right here. You're talking about just basically using about the middle third of your page here for the verbiage. 4 short paragraphs makes perfect sense. If you're somebody that has 15, 20 years of experience, you might slip to the second page, but the second page better be interesting, because it is going to take some time, and probably in the initial screening process. The second page might not be even considered. It might, if you're interested on page 1, then possibly I would continue to read other things like your second page or cover letter.
And that's another very good point that you made yesterday. Prospective employers often review the resumes first, and then cover letters, right? So if they're interested, and cover letters take a little longer than resumes do.
It's a complementary document, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not interested in me in the first place, why would I spend the time reading your cover letter? However, cover letters do make a difference, absolutely. They need to be specific. If you want to tick off a hiring manager, send some general template that could be received by anybody. Maybe just change the name at the top, the company at the top. They know that. They see these all the time. So reference the specific position, reference cultural attributes of that specific organization, things that you appreciate about that organization. Make them feel like they're your number one choice, whether they are or they're not. Make sure that they understand that you've done the research, you know who they are, and how you fit with them on the job, and how you fit with them culturally.
Okay, well, Mr. Franco, thank you very much for your time. But before we go, you have an event that's coming up, a leadership event.
On March 2nd, we have a leadership event. It's a Saturday morning. It's about a 4-hour event. Starts around 9:30. We'll run till about 3 o'clock or so. It's a fun event. It's specifically about leadership. Those of you who are thinking about getting into leadership positions, specifically managing people, it's a good event. I'd love to have as many people there as possible.
That's great. And Mr. Franco has a wealth of experience with Novartis, American Express, I believe about 30 years of experience, right?
Is it that many? Oh my God. All right, make me feel bad.
Bob Franco, Assistant Director at Career Center here at Seton Hall University. Look him up. Thank you again for spending time with us.
Look forward to meeting you. Look forward to meeting them all.
Okay,
Thanks.
take care.